The big story of the night, Zach, is Mason Miller has a fractured pinky. And no, it's not on his throwing hand. But for everyone that thought that that is the peak or the top reliever that could be on the market, looks like he's not going to be on the market. But I think we're getting some news here, Zach, of the truth behind it, because give a little backstory. There was some rumors about how it actually came about.
Yeah. So originally when the Athletics put Mason Miller on the 15-day IL, it was said that he had hurt himself by hitting his hand in the trainer's room, but it was not out of frustration. It was doing some exercise. However, it seems like the Oakland Athletics are saying something else. So, Ryan, we actually have a clip from, I would say, a pretty reliable source on what went down.
Yep. And so the reliable source is Oakland Athletics manager Mark Kotsay, who's clearing the air on what happened that with the incident with Mason Miller going on the IL. So why don't you guys all take a listen?
Some clarity on Mason's injury. What exactly happened? How long are you expecting him to be out for?
Yeah, I know there's some speculation, and the original statement that was put out is pretty accurate. I believe maybe Mason's agent may have, thought differently and made a statement of his own. But, how we do things here in this organization, we tell the truth. And the truth is, Mason post-game, Monday night after being, done with his pitching, came in. The training room was going through his recovery, was reminded that he had a post-game lift to get in. Out of a little bit of frustration, he just kind of pounded his fist down on a padded training table, which, out of emotion. We've all been there, done it, and unfortunately it resulted in a fracture in his non-pitching hand, in his left hand, in or around where his pinky area is, which, unfortunately, he's not able to squeeze his glove and has gotten himself put on the IL.
So there it is, right? So not being able to squeeze his glove, because people, Zach, are probably going to say, well, he can still go out there and pitch. No, he can't. And he's on the 15-day IL. And there's perspective. And I guess when it rains and it pours for A's fans, I just feel for A's fans. I feel for Mason Miller. I feel for Mark Kotsay. Look, this happens, by the way, frustrating moments. And the fact that it was a padded training table and it still fractures, everything's going wrong. But let's just talk about what it means. It means that the top reliever that could be possibly on the market is no longer on the market here, Zach. So now we're sitting here going, well, what other options could be available that have said that they would be sellers? The one that comes to mind for me now is who the Orioles just played in Tanner Scott.
Yeah, I think this impacts the trade deadline an immense amount, because even if Mason Miller was not going to be traded, and personally, I don't think he was either way, this takes him off the market, which means someone else has to become the big fish. Does a Tanner Scott now take over as the big fish? It's going to be interesting to see how over the next few days, because what a tough time. I mean, talk about feeling bad for the Athletics. If you did want to trade him, 6 days before the deadline, he fractures his pinky. It's just not how they wanted this to go down at all. So this hurts the deadline a lot for a lot of aspects. We talk, it hurts the Athletics. It hurts teams that potentially, like a Baltimore, who there have been reports the Orioles, probably just due diligence, they had made phone calls about the availability of Mason Miller. So it hurts a lot of things.
Yeah, and I mean, right now, I agree with you. It was going to take a lot to get Mason Miller, right? And deep down, did they really want to make the move? But I feel bad. I don't know what direction the A's are going in, right? And I think that's the scary part for the fan base. It's you're moving to Sacramento, but are you going to Vegas? Does Vegas really want you? And also, what direction's the team going? But at least for right now, for the trade deadline, it's one reliever that you can cross off the list. And now teams are going to really focus their attention, and maybe they might try to emphasize on certain players. Now, Tanner Scott would be a great reunion for Baltimore. Let's go back to that for a second. Why? It looks like he's found why he was so touted as a prospect when he came up through the system in Baltimore. The dude's got a great arm. He's got great stuff, but it took a little bit of time for him to find out or to find how to be that effective. And the Orioles saw it firsthand, Zach. He was very effective against the Birds, but then would that make other teams sellers in this case and their price point going up? Like the A's, Estevez is an arm that I really like from the Angels, but they've kind of said initially, oh, we're not going to sell off some of our pieces. Well, would you sell them off if a team's now a little bit more desperate for a pretty high-end reliever? I think the answer might be yes.
Yeah, and I mean, we want to talk about a seller's market already with how close the National League is, with how close the American League wildcard races are. It felt like this year of all years, there were just so many teams that the way I put it is this false hope that they're too close where they don't want to give up on a season. So there are less sellers out there. And it got to the point where it felt like there were one or two big moves that were going to be made. And Mason Miller was kind of one of those. Is a team going to overpay for Mason Miller? Because that's what you'd have to do. For a guy as good as him, you have to overpay in this situation. And now we are sitting here 6 days from the deadline, and Mason Miller is on the 15-day IL for something that if you're an Athletics fan, if you're an Orioles fan, if you're a team that wanted Mason Miller, you're going, this could have been avoided. And I think that's what sucks the most for everyone involved. It sucks for Mason Miller. Yeah. You think this is what, people will say like, oh, this, that, and the other about this. This is a freak accident.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone's been mad. Now, it's a good reminder, though, never slam your hand out of frustration. Now, I've seen players, true story, Zach. I remember the time an Orioles pitcher back in the day, Josh Towers, broke his hand punching the wall. I believe it might have been in Toronto. I got a fact checked with it. But I remember I was in the clubhouse and I heard this loud thud outside. And it was Josh punching a wall. How many times have we seen a player or hear a player punch a cooler, kick something, and then they're out? So in this case for Mason, look, it happens, but a reminder, your hands, especially for players, your arm, like that's the ticket. So it's a painful reminder. And again, this is a fluke accident, freak accident for Mason Miller. But the other part of the reality of the situation, Mason Miller's value has never been higher. And it still could be extremely high next year or whenever he's healthy. But right now, with the team trying to win, if they want to be desperate, this could have been where the Oakland A's could have cashed in if they wanted to move him. But now they got to move on. A lot of other teams got to move on. But the thing that is consistent throughout this deadline right now, Zach, teams are going to go after relief pitchers. Teams are going to go after starters. But the relief pitchers are what teams are going to feel comfortable with. If you're looking at the American League right now, it's wide open for the most part. And taking out the Orioles and the Yankees, Guardians, the team that actually scares me the most is the Houston Astros. And despite their issues in their bullpen with having guys back there that maybe haven't pitched up to par, I'll tell you what, they have experience in that back end. And I would trust those guys that Houston has as they move forward, despite their regular season struggles. The Orioles are one of those teams, the Yankees, as they fight for the division, they're going to be looking for that arm.
Yeah, and I like the point you proved a few minutes ago with Estevez. It's going to be interesting to see what arms now become available, because a lot of these teams thought, okay, the guys we have aren't the frontline guys. They're not going to get us the biggest return. But now, less options out there, more teams wanting to buy. You can drive the price up on these guys. And we could be seeing some teams give up some nice hauls for guys that weren't going to be available, but because of that key word here at the deadline, it's every single year, it's who's going to be desperate, who feels like they need that piece. And as 6 o'clock on the 30th starts ticking closer, they're going to say, okay, it's worth it. Give up these prospects to go get that guy that maybe wouldn't be available if other relievers were still on the market.
Yep. And we know it. Pitching is what's going to help you get to where you want to go. And there's no secret, since we talk a lot of the Orioles in Baltimore here, the Orioles need some more high leverage arms. So I'll be very curious to see what Mike Elias and the group do here. So that's what we have for this. And as always, if you guys like these videos, hit that like and subscribe button. The Ryan Ripken Show is live every Monday and Thursday on YouTube, and you can listen on Apple and Spotify. All right, guys, have a day, have a night. Let us know what you want to talk about next.